A REST API allows your app or system to expose its functionality to multiple types of clients both inside and outside of your network, including clients across the internet. This is what you would use if you wanted to write a program to collect data from, say, Twitter, Yahoo Finance, or even NASA. If you're looking into building your own REST API and you're considering the .NET platform for it, please stay with me as I show you how to do this end-to-end using the latest innovations provided by .NET 5. I hope you enjoy it. In the first part of this tutorial, you're going to learn the scenario to be used across the tutorial, how to create a .NET 5 Web API project from scratch, how to use Visual Studio Code for building and debugging the project we're going to work on, how to trust the development certificate installed by .NET 5 and that's going to be needed for HTTPS access, and how to use Swagger UI to interact with the API. To follow the tutorial, you're going to need a few things, including the .NET 5 SDK, Visual Studio Code, and some basic understanding of the C# language. Now let's talk about the scenario that we're going to be using as the domain for this tutorial. So let's imagine that we have some sort of a catalog system and that we have a bunch of items available in it. So in this sense, like I am a video gamer, so I like to think of these items as items that I would use within a video game. So items like potions, swords, shields, and stuff like that, right? So that's a system that we have in place. It has a catalog, and of course we're going to have users that are going to be would like to manage this catalog via their browser, right? They have a browser, they want to manage this catalog of items somehow. So things that they would like to do is, well, how are we going to create items in the catalog? How can we retrieve the list of items currently available in this catalog? How can we update properties of the items? And how can we delete items in this catalog? So as it is today, we do have the catalog available, but we lack or we don't have a way to expose this catalog to the internet so that people can just go ahead and manage it from the browser. So that's where we're going to introduce a REST API for this catalog. And during this tutorial, we're going to see how to build this REST API from scratch using .NET 5. So here we are in Visual Studio Code. And the first thing we're going to do is open a brand new terminal. And in this terminal, we're just going to switch to the directory where we're going to create our project. And to create a project, we're going to be using the .NET CLI. So to do that, we're just going to say .NET new and the type of project that we want to create. For a REST API, that's going to be Web API. And the name of the project is going to be catalog. Hit enter. And that generates all the files based on the Web API template. So now I'm going to open that folder that got generated, catalog. And as usual, as you open a .NET project in Visual Studio Code, it will prompt you to add a few additional files for building and debugging the project. So I'm going to say yes, and those files get generated under .VS Code. So on the left side, you can actually see all the generated files. And let's take a quick look at each of these files as a quick lab around. So the first file we're going to look at is the csproc file. And this file this is called the project file, and this is used to declare how we're going to build this project. In this case, we're saying that we're going to be using the .NET Web SDK to build the project, which includes a bunch of tools and tasks to specifically designed for web kind of projects. The next interesting thing will be the target framework moniker or target framework, which in our case is Net5. The target framework defines the API surface or what kind of APIs are going to be available to your project. In this case, Net5 is perfectly good for us. And the next thing is going to be a bunch of NuGet packages that we're not going to be diving into right now. But those are just dependencies that we already acquired on this project. Close that. And the next file that I'm going to take a look is just program.cs. Program.cs is what we call the entry point of the application. What this will do is just pretty much raise or stand up the host that the process that's going to become the host of our program. And it also declares a bunch of defaults, and it also sets up what we call the startup class for our project. So let's actually go to startup and see what's going on there. Really, the main things in startup are that we have this property called configuration that we receive as part of the startup constructor. And this you can use anytime you need to read some configuration information from multiple sources, like from environment variables or files, different kinds of files, or a bunch of other places, a configuration that you don't want to hard code into your service. The next interesting method is configure services, and this is the place where you would register all the services that you're going to be using across your application. I will talk about this later on in this video. And the last interesting piece is the configure method. This is what we configure, what we call the pipeline, the request pipeline on ASP.NET. And so this just defines a bunch of what we call middlewares, which are additional components that will execute before your controller or your code actually executes. So each of these can execute as a request comes into the ASP.NET process, and from there all the way into when your code executes. But we're not going to be exploring this part in this video. A couple of other things are, so we have a weather forecast. So this is a model that gets auto-generated for the sample application here. Just have a few very simple properties here. And alongside this model, there's a controller. Now the controller in ASP.NET is just pretty much the class that handles the routes, pretty much the routes that your service exposes, right? But we're not going to be using this in this video, so let's not dive too much into that. A few other files, app settings JSON. This is where you can declare configuration. That's going to be that you don't want to use hard code into your program, your source code. And right now it just has some configuration for login and the hosts that are allowed in the app. There's also a variant of app settings JSON, which is app settings development JSON. So development, the fact that it does say app settings.development.json means that when we're running in development environment, these settings will take precedence on top of the app settings JSON. So you could have a bunch of these app settings files for each of your environment, like production, test, integration, all of these environments. Now that we talk about environments, maybe a good time to take a look at the files generated by VS Code. Which are task.json and launch.json. Task.json is just a file that declares the tasks. This is a key concept on Visual Studio Code. You can declare tasks, and a task can be a bunch of things. And in our case, the most interesting task is the fact that we want to just run the .NET build command. So .NET build, which is going to be used for building our code. And in terms of launch.json, this is the file that controls what is going to be launched or executed when we do like an F5 or when we start debugging the code. In this case, it's already pointing to the right DLL to start debugging. Lastly, we also have launch settings.json. And really the only interesting part here that I'd like you to take a look is the application URL. Here we are defining the URLs in plural for our application. In this case, we're saying we're going to be serving our server in localhost 5000, and for the HTTPS version, we're serving it, which is going to be the default version, is going to be 5001. We're also declaring the actual ASP.NET Core environment variable, and we're setting it as development. And so, in Visual Studio Code, this is not the actual one that's been honored. The one that is going to be honored is in launch.json. As you see over here, this is the one that takes precedence in Visual Studio Code. So that's good. What we want to do now is actually to test this project just to make sure that everything is running as expected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the debug hub over here. Let me expand this a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is just click and start debugging. Let's see what happens. right? So a browser pops up, and then if you're getting this page here, what it means is pretty normal. It means that we don't have the self-signed certificate that comes with .NET. It has not been trusted, right? And there's a very simple way to go around this issue and to properly trust the certificate that comes with .NET. So let me actually just close this and stop, and let's switch back to the terminal. Actually, let me open a new terminal here. Yeah, there it is. So in order to trust the certificate that comes bundled with the .NET SDK, what you have to do is just type .NET dev cert https trust. So when you run this, you're going to get this pop-up asking you to confirm that you actually want to trust that cert. And I'm going to say yes. And then that pretty much should do it. So I'm going to run it again. Let's see what we get. All right. So yeah, so we still are not getting pretty much anything here, but we are not seeing any trust issue anymore. Now, if you actually want to see something meaningful here, although it doesn't matter too much for us at this point, what you can do is just go to Swagger, and then you're going to get this nice UI. So this is what we call Swagger, or also Open API specification. So this is a component is bundled now with .NET 5. So you don't have to do anything to make it available. As you saw, we did nothing. So it's just there in the /Swagger URL. And what this does is allows you to easily describe all the operations, all the actions, all the routes that are available in your API, and allows you to also interact with them easily. So if, for example, if I just go to the get route and I click try it out, click execute, it will go ahead and run it, and we can see already some results for that route. And then one thing that I like to do as I work on these projects is to really not open the browser every single time that I run the project. So let's actually switch a little bit the behavior of VS Code, so that we'll just keep this window open, and then anytime we just hit F5 or hit run, it will not open more windows. So to do that, I'm going to stop here, and we can go to launch the JSON. Let's close this. The only thing that you have to do is just remove the server ready action section here. And that's pretty much it. If I run again, and by the way, you can do this by just pressing F5, which I'll do right now, F5. That starts the host, as you can see, but it did not open any more windows, which is fine because we have the browser ready to go right there. Then the last thing that I like to do in terms of a project setup is to simplify how we build our project in Visual Studio Code. So for that, let me minimize this and go back to Visual Studio Code, stop this, close that. What I'm going to do is to go to task.json, and the only thing that I'm going to do is to add this little section here under the build task, which is just what we call the group, which is kind build, and it says is default true. What this does is that allows us to more easily build the project. So now I can go to, let me just save this, saved. I can go to terminal, run build tasks, and it immediately builds. Without that, it will just pop up yet another menu to do the build. I can also now do Ctrl+Shift+B, and it will do the same thing. So yes, that just speeds up our build situation. So that's it for this video. In the next one, we're going to be introducing the domain entity, which is the item for this service, and also we're introducing our repository class, which is the one that's going to be in charge of both getting and persisting the items that are going to be created across the service. So yeah, I hope this was useful, and yeah, if you like it, please consider hitting the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so that you know when I publish any new videos. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.